steps onto the path of discipleship, and eventually onto the path of initiation. 6. Substitute for past, necessarily self-interested and personal ambition, the needs of the group and the goal of world service. Is not the above sufficiently practical? Initiation carried to its consummation, as far as humanity is concerned, produces the liberated master of the wisdom, free from the limitations of the individual, garnering the fruits of the individualization process and functioning increasingly as the solar angel, because focused primarily in the inner spiritual body. Awareness of the presence is thus steadily developed. This fact merits the deep study and meditation of all disciples. As the three rays which govern the lower triplicity blend, and synthesize and produce the vital personality, and as they in their turn dominate the ray of the dense physical body, the lower man enters into a prolonged condition of conflict. Gradually and increasingly, the soul ray, the ray of persistent and magnetic grasp, as it is occultly called, begins to become more active. In the brain of the man who is a developed personality, an increased awareness of vibration is set up. There are many degrees and stages in this experience, and they cover many lives. The personality ray and the egoic ray at first seem to clash, and then later a steady warfare is set up with the disciple as the onlooker and dramatic participator. Arjuna emerges into the arena of the battlefield. Midway between the two forces he stands, a conscious tiny point of sentient awareness and of light. Around him and in him and through him the energies of the two rays pour and conflict. Gradually, as the battle continues to rage, he becomes a more active factor, and drops the attitude of the detached and uninterested onlooker. When he is definitely aware of the issues involved, and definitely throws the weight of his influence, desires, and mind onto the side of the soul, he can take the first initiation. When the ray of the soul focuses itself fully through him, and all his centers are controlled by that focused soul ray, then he becomes the transfigured initiate, and takes the third initiation. The ray of the personality is occultly extinguished, or absorbed by the ray of the soul, and all the potencies and attributes of the lower rays become subsidiary to and colored by the soul ray. The disciple becomes a man of God, a person whose powers are controlled by the dominant vibration of the soul ray, and whose inner, sensitive mechanism is vibrating to the measure of that soul ray, which in its turn is being itself reoriented to, and controlled by, the monadic ray. The process then repeats itself. -1. The many rays which constitute the lower separative man, are fused and blended into the three personality rays. 2. These are, in their turn, fused and blended into a synthetic expression of the dominant self-assertive man, the personal self. 3. The personality rays then become one ray, and in their turn, become subservient to the dual ray of the soul. Again, therefore, three rays are blended and fused. 4. The soul rays dominate the personality and the three become again the one, as the dual ray of the soul, and the blended ray of the personality vibrate to the measure of the highest of the soul rays, the ray of the soul's group, which is ever regarded as the true egoic ray. 5. Then, in time, the soul ray begins, at the third initiation, to blend with the ray of the monad, the life ray. The higher initiate is therefore a dual and not a triple expression. 6. In time, however, this realized duality gives place to the mysterious, indescribable process called identification, which is the final stage of soul unfoldment. It is useless to say more, for what might be said could only be comprehended by those preparing for the fourth initiation, and this treatise is written for disciples and initiates of the first degree. In these successive stages we can glimpse the vision of what we are, and may be. Steadily the unfolding purpose of our own souls, those angels of persistent and undying love, should gain fuller and deeper control over each of us, and this, at any personal cost and sacrifice, should be our steadfast aim. For this, in truth and sincerity, we should strive. We have thus touched upon the three great divisions, which mark the soul's progress towards its goal. Through the process of individualization, the soul arrives at a true self-consciousness and awareness in the three worlds of its experience. The actor in the drama of life masters his part. Through the process of initiation, the soul becomes aware of the essential nature of divinity. Participation in full consciousness with the group, and the absorption of the personal and individual into the whole, characterize this stage on the path of evolution. Finally comes that mysterious process wherein the soul becomes so absorbed into that supreme reality, and synthesis through identification that even the consciousness of the group fades out, except when deliberately recovered in the work of service. Naught is then known save deity, no separation of any part, no lesser syntheses, and no divisions or differentiations. During these processes it might be stated that three streams of energy play upon the consciousness of the awakening man. A. The energy of matter itself, as it affects the consciousness of the inner spiritual man, who is using the form as a medium of expression. B. The energy of the soul itself, or of the solar angel, as that energy pours forth upon the vehicles and produces reciprocal energy in the solar form. C. The energy of life itself, a meaningless phrase, and one that only initiates of the third initiation can grasp, for even the discoveries of modern science give no real idea as to the true nature of life. Life or essential energy is more than the activity of the atom, or of that living principle which produces self-perpetuation, reproduction, motion, growth, and that peculiar something which we call livingness. It may be possible to create, or produce the lowest or third aspect of life in the scientific laboratories so-called, but to reproduce or create the other and more essential aspects which work out as the conscious response, the intelligent embryonic purpose which seems to animate all substances, that is not possible. When the third initiation is reached, man will understand why this impossibility exists. More cannot be said, for until that initiation is experienced it would not be understood. To bring more light upon this question of the triple expansion of consciousness, for all these crises are aspects of one great unfolding purpose, or process, which we call individualization, initiation, and identification, it should be borne in mind that these words connote something to us today from the angle of our present point in evolution, from our inherited teaching and thought habits, and from the standpoint of modern knowledge and terminologies. Later they may appear in a totally different light, when we know more and the race has advanced further into the light. But from the light which streams forth from that larger synthesis, and from the angle of vision of those whose consciousness is higher and greater and more inclusive than the human, the significance of these words may appear totally different. Definition is simply the expression of the immediate understanding of the human mind. But a definition may later be seen to be imperfect and even false, from the angle of a wider knowledge, and a more inclusive grasp of wholes, just as is the case with the so-called fact. Hence all definition, and eventually all facts, will be known to be temporary. All exegesis is but passing in its usefulness. The basic truths of today may be seen later as simply aspects of still greater truths, and when the greater truth is grasped, the significance and the interpretation of its formerly important part is seen to be widely different to what has supposed. This must never be forgotten by any who may read this treatise on the seven rays. An initiate, reading the three words we have been considering, has a very different idea about them than has a disciple, or a person who has never thought or studied along these lines, and to whom our vocabulary is novel and strange, conveying little meaning, and that usually quite incorrect. In individualization, the life of God which has been subjected to the processes of growth, stimulation and development in the three lower kingdoms, becomes focused in the fourth kingdom in nature, the human, through the agency of a cycle of crisis, and becomes subjected to the influence of soul energy in one of the seven ray aspects. The quality of the form aspect, as embodied in the personality and expressed by the phrase, the ray of the personality, becomes subject to the quality of the egoic ray. Those two great influences play upon and affect each other, interacting all the time, producing modifications and changes until, slowly and gradually, the ray of the personality becomes less dominant, and the ray of the soul steadily assumes prominence. Eventually it will be the soul ray that will be expressed, and not the form ray. This personality, or form ray then becomes simply the medium of expression through which the quality of the soul can make its presence felt in full power. Something of this idea is conveyed in the ancient occult phrase, the lesser fire must be put out by the greater light. A symbol of this can be seen in the power of the sun apparently to put out a little fire, when it can pour its heat right into it. It was earlier pointed out that we can profitably use the words life, quality, appearance in lieu of spirit, soul and body, for they express the same truth. The quality of matter, built up into human form and indwelt by the soul or solar angel, is that which normally colors the appearance. Later, this inherent quality of the appearance changes, and it is the quality nature of deity, as expressed in the soul, which obliterates the quality of the forms. During the stage when it is the quality of matter which is the paramount influence, that material radiance makes itself felt in the triple form. These from the angle of the entire sweep of the evolutionary process, and as far as the human personality is concerned appear sequentially, and qualify the matter aspect with its three major presentations: 1. The quality of physical substance. During this stage of development, the man is almost entirely physical in his reactions and completely under the ray of his physical body. This is the correspondence in man to the Lemurian epoch, and to the period of pure infancy. 2. The quality of the astral body. This governs the individual for a very long period, and still governs, more or less, the masses of men. It corresponds to the Atlantean period, and to the stage of adolescence. The ray of the astral body is of very great power. 3. The quality of the mental body. This, as far as the race is concerned, is just beginning to wax in power in this Aryan race to which this era belongs. It corresponds to the stage of maturity in the individual. The ray of the mind has a very close relation to the solar angel, and there is a peculiar affiliation between the angel of the presence and the mental man. It is this deep-seated, though oft unrecognized, interplay and cultivated intercourse, which produces the at-one-ment between the soul and its mechanism, man in the three worlds. From the angle of these three ray influences, we have, in the life of the aspirant, a recapitulation of the triple process, which we could call the processes of unfoldment of the Lemurian, Atlantean, and Aryan consciousness. On the path of probation, the ray of the physical